Hi there, welcome to the latest episode, my third of today, episode of 10 Minute Moon. And this one is quite a bizarre topic, but makes sense. And it's written by David Walker of the Express today, this article. The headline is SNP ministers should be banned from making false statements as John Swinney's been urged to correct the record. Calls have been made for the Scottish Parliament to be tougher on politicians who make misleading statements while out in the campaign trail after the First Minister and Kate Forbes reported an energy myth. Imagine that. Imagine the SNP telling fibs, eh? Oh, who'd have thought? So here we go. They were collared for doing so out with Holyrood. The First Minister and his Deputy repeatedly claimed that more than 100% of Scotland's electricity came from renewable sources. This is untrue, as the country still relies on fossil fuels and nuclear in order to keep the lights on due to the unprecedented nature of renewables such as wind and solar. Both NAP figures told interviewers and the public that Scotland was sustainable through environmentally friendly heating and electricity. If that was the case, we would just stop the oil stuff, wouldn't we? Think about it. A complaint has been made to Holyrood Standards Committee after the senior SNP politicians made these claims during the general election campaigning. Now, I hope the Standards Committee is not the Ethics and Standards Commission, because they can't look at them because they're ministers. It's mad, that, isn't it? And do you know who the public have to complain to if the Ethics and Standards Commission can't look at it because it's like a minister or a First Minister? The Office of the First Minister. I know that through personal experience. Anyway, blah, blah, blah. Scottish Tory MSP Liam Kerr is demanding a change to the rules which would outlaw using false statements while electioneering. In the statement to MSPs last month, Mr Swinney said, "When we came to office, 20% of Scotland's gross electricity consumption was coming from renewables, and it's now the equivalent of 113%. He repeated that claim in an election speech in Glasgow, and Miss Forbes has said similar in broadcast interviews. The Full Facts-Checking Organisation has previously reprimanded the First Minister and his former boss Nicola Sturgeon for using this line, as it's simply not true. Scotland does generate more electricity from renewables than the total amount of electricity it uses, but fossil fuels are required to keep the lights on. This is because it's not possible to store all renewable energy when there's no demand. And because of lack of wind or sun, it means that renewables cannot be relied on around the clock. According to the latest stats, in the 12 months to June 2023, about 64% of electricity Scotland used came from renewables, with 20% from nuclear plants and 15% from fossil fuels. So being able to have the capacity to produce is quite a different thing from actually using. Because while you're producing, if you're producing in the middle of the summer, for example, with solar, you've nowhere to store it, or nowhere to store a good capacity of it, so it's wasted. And then when you need it, if there's no sun, then it's useless. And the likes of the wind, because it's unpredictable, when it's really windy, you might be producing more electricity than you can store, and at other times when there's no massive wind, you've nowhere to get that electricity from. So it's a complete play on words, and in fact a lie. That not only them, but the Nats, the people who shout freedom or the mob, they just keep shouting it because it suits their narrative when it's actually not true. That is because it's not possible to store all renewable energy when there's no demand, and because a lack of wind or sun means that the renewables cannot be relied on around the clock. Blah, blah, blah. Right? That's truth. That's where we are. But don't let the Nats. In 2022, Robert Chute, the chairman of the UK Statistics Authority, stepped in after it was reported to him, and he asked Scotland's chief statistician to ensure the First Minister's office is briefed in this matter, after Ms Sturgeon had said similar. Mr Kerr has asked for the Standards Committee to look at whether the ministerial code should have a greater enforcement over inaccurate statements made outside Parliament. That's a good shout, actually, because it's currently just what they say in Parliament. But then if you walk out of Parliament and do an interview and tell absolute nonsense, the ministerial code doesn't come into play. That is quite frightening, isn't it? He wrote, "This seems particularly A Reggie is coming as it does during an election. Well, that's true, and it's probably the best time. If you're going to tell lies, you may as well tell them important lies. The Times reports that he plans to submit an amendment to the Scottish Elections Bill, which passed its first parliamentary hurdle on Thursday, which would make it law for parliamentarians to provide accurate information when out campaigning. You would kind of think that would be law anyway, wouldn't you? But we don't have laws against that. That is absolutely bizarre. It has never been more important for politicians to be factual and credible with information they circulate. Both John Swinney and Kate Forbes know fine well their claims on renewable energy are wide of the mark. I told them as much in Parliament. Yet they have continued to rehearse them time and time, in public and even in national television. Arguably, if Parliament had more stringent rules around accuracy and correcting the record, such misleading statements could be stopped in their tracks. If that is accepted, it must be in the interests of all to tighten up the rules on this front. I kind of agree with that. That's just mental, isn't it? That there is no parliamentary legislation to stop ministers telling lies when they're outside Parliament, but there are ones to cover them when they're inside Parliament. A government spokesman said the First Minister had written to Kerr and the presiding officer to correct the record. Now, this is important. He said the Scottish Government is clear that although renewable technologies generate equivalent of 113% of Scottish gross electricity consumption, 64.7% of the electricity consumed in Scotland came from renewable sources. But Mr. Kerr said on social media he's yet to receive the letter. But what I do find strange is they've just confirmed to this newspaper, the Scottish Government, the right figures. Yet Mr. Swinney and Miss Forbes are still spouting them. The Scottish Government know the right figures. So should they, because they are in the government. One is the First Minister and the other is the Deputy First Minister. So if they don't know these figures, I would be shocked and stunned and even more concerned about how they can do their job when the Scottish Government knows it. No, they're the top two people in the Scottish Government, guys. There isn't anybody higher up. The First Minister, the Deputy First Minister. Think about that for a minute. Either don't know the right figures, which is mental, or do know them and are continuing to talk bollocks about them. So I think, bear in mind, they're off for 2 months now, aren't they? So, they're not going to be able to get these things written up anytime soon, but I hope they get them in place before the next round of Holyrood elections. And I think there's some non-politicians who are thinking going to start putting themselves forward for these course elections. And I know there's a guy that does similar to me called Silver Fox down south who's actually got Scottish heritage and actually wasn't even born down south. He was born in Northern Ireland, which you would never guess with the accent, but he has got good Scottish connections, and he's actually threw his hat into the ring and said he will be standing for election in the next Holyrood elections. And I think there's going to be a groundswell of people, independents or people joining new parties or smaller parties and putting themselves up for election in the Scottish Holyrood elections, because of the way it works. It kind of makes it a bit easier for people in smaller parties to get in, and I kind of think that's the direction we would want to go in. So it breaks the traditional parties a wee bit, puts another mix of people in Scottish Parliament to discuss things, and I genuinely hope nobody has an overall majority in the next Scottish Parliament. I really do hope it gets back to minority or coalition governments, because then the radicalisation has to get pulled in a bit. People can't be radical when they don't have out with control, and that's why we're in the mess we're in. So all these people throwing their hat in the ring for the next Holyrood elections, I feel it's very warming, and I'd imagine that we'll hear more and more, particularly as we get closer to it, or if it's called early and when it's actually official, that you'll hear, and I know a lot of people who are not politicians who are standing for election at Holyrood, and that's certainly their plan. Some of them as independents and some of them with some smaller or newer parties, and I think that would be a very healthy situation for Scotland. And I do wish my good friend Silver Fox all the very best when the election comes about and he starts his campaign, and he'll certainly get all the help and support that he needs, and I can give him from me. And I hope the Scottish Parliament in its next session, when after the election, is full of new people, and we can make it less political. Sounds a bit bizarre, but not people with career politicians and not people with party political ties that they need to adhere to. And I genuinely hope we have a good mix of normal people in the Scottish Parliament by the time we have and after the next election. So good luck, David Silver Fox, and I look forward to seeing how your campaign starts in the near future. So if you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up. If you've not already done so, please hit the subscribe button, and most important of all, Mr. John Swinney, Kate Forbes, anybody that lies in the SNP or their vastly reducing cult members, see everybody else. Have a great day. Cheery bye now.